you all for joining us today. It's nice to see a lot of names coming up here. I do ask everyone to make sure that you are muted. If you're not familiar with using that, if you kind of go down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see that mute function. We're anticipating we could have close to about 100 people participating, so we want to eliminate any background noise. So please do pay attention and make sure that you are muted. Otherwise, Maggie, who is helping to run this meeting, and she'll be able to mute people too as necessary. So a few other housekeeping things. I'm still getting a few last minute emails from folks trying to connect, so I apologize for having to respond to those, and we'll also get this going. But we did have close to about 87, 88 volunteers sign up for this meeting. So we want to thank all of you for doing that. And we'll be taking attendance and kind of going through and looking, marking off who's all here. If possible, if you can kind of look at naming yourselves, that's something you can do. If you kind of hover over your little screen, sometimes you'll see like some little dots that you can click on, and you'll have the ability to rename yourself so you can actually see first and last name, and that'll help identify who's here. You are welcome to keep your video on or off. That's your own personal preference. It is nice to see some faces. So we do appreciate those that are willing to do that, but we also understand too, folks have a lot of things might be going on. And another thing I want to point out is that there is the chat feature. If you've used Zoom before, hopefully you're kind of used to that. I see some people already posting some chat messages. That's something that we'll be asking, throughout the presentation. We've got some staff here that'll be monitoring the chat. So any questions that you want to share with Jill or other leadership team members, you can do that in the chat feature there. So, and also, if you're having difficulties too, feel free to send an email to either primarily to Tracy, but you can also send an email to me too, and we'll do our best to respond to those. So I think we'll give folks maybe about another minute, and then I'll kind of repeat a few things here, but then we'll get started shortly. Okay, so it's about 10:07. Thank you all for hanging on and kind of waiting patiently here as we get started. You'll hear this frequently throughout the meeting, but we do ask people to be aware of their mute function. And we are asking for people to go ahead and mute themselves and control that. So please do pay attention. If you're not muted, go ahead and do that.
Because I already muted him, just touch it,
I'm just going to finish up one more thing here and continue on. So Maggie is our slide operator. So Maggie, if you want to go ahead and advance to the next slide, if you're able to. So welcome everybody to our first Holden Forest and Garden virtual town hall for volunteers. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. Looking at the current number, we have 89 people that have up, so that's wonderful. And like I said, I'm going to mention again as you come on, please be sure that you do mute yourselves. So we want to cut back on any background noise. So all of you do have the power to control your mute function. We do ask that you do choose to mute yourselves. And then also, if you can, if you have any questions that come up during the meeting, you'll see the chat feature. You can use those to post a question. It kind of defaults to post so that everybody can see those, but you also have the option to send a message. Judy Tobin and Tracy Patterson will be collecting those. So if you just want to send a message directly to them, you can do that, or you can just post it for everyone to see. I am taking attendance during this, so you can kind of monitor and please, you know, make sure you get your name if possible showing. There is a way you can rename yourself so that you can see that you are indeed on. And well, I will be then giving hours for everybody for participating too. So you do get volunteer hours for being a part of this. We are also recording this meeting, and that's something that, you know, we plan to have available for afterwards. And with that, you should be seeing the PowerPoint screen. And, you know, when we're kind of done with the PowerPoint, you'll have the option to sort of adjust your view to either speaker view or gallery view to see a lot of faces. But otherwise, you can kind of scroll through and see those. And I think that's about it. Again, I'll be mentioning, please mute yourselves. And I'm going to turn it over to Jill. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks everyone for joining us. And unfortunately, I can only see about 3 faces at a time, just because I have to mind the slides. But it is great to have all of you. I can't believe we have such incredible attendance on this Zoom meeting, so thank you so much. Be much nicer to be doing it in person, but I'm really excited that we found out a way to do it as live as we can and to connect with all of you. We originally had a town hall scheduled, Sarah, I think that was in March. Can't quite remember, but it was after the after we all got the stay-at-home order. But the agenda then would have been a little bit different. But so just to give you a heads up on how we're going to manage today's meeting, we thought that it would be really helpful to do for you what we did for all of our staff a couple of weeks ago. And there'll be even more updated information, but we'll start with talking about this current pandemic and COVID and how it's impacted the organization and how we've been managing and what our expectations are going forward. And then we'll leave some time for questions. And then we'll switch to the original purpose of the meeting, and to the best of our ability, we'll go through our new strategic plan and our new direction for the organization. So honestly, it's really refreshing to talk about things that are very forward focused and future focused. So I'm hoping we have plenty of time to do that. But if not, I want to assure you that what I'm going to do is spend as much time on the COVID piece and answering questions as we need to. And then when we get to the strategic plan part of the conversation or discussion today, we'll get through as much as we can. I may move through things more quickly just based on time, because I think we have about an hour and a half today. But if we can't get through everything in the same depth, we've already been talking about ways that we can do more meetings like this, or maybe eventually do some things in person when things open up a little bit more. So rest assured that if we don't get through everything today, or if we have to move through things at a pretty quick pace, we're looking for ways to manage, manage getting you all the information you need down the road. I guess first and foremost, I want to say thank you. This has been really an unprecedented time, an incredibly uncertain time. It's been really interesting to manage an organization and all the impacts that COVID has had on our organization when information is literally changing and evolving every day. There is so much that we know now that we never would have imagined. When we closed or asked our staff to work remotely starting March 13th, we thought we would be home for a few weeks, and you can see from all of our backgrounds, we're still at home. And we're just starting to open, as all of you know, again, which is really exciting, but it comes with its own set of new issues and challenges. But I'm happy to talk through all of that with you today. So Maggie, do you want to go to the next slide? So one thing we can't do, and I just wanted to share this with you. So all of leadership team who's on this chart is on the call today. Later on, you actually get to see pictures of some of them. So if they actually don't speak and you can't hear their voice today, which will prompt you to see their picture, I at least wanted to give you a quick overview of what the structure is. I'm not going to walk through this in detail, but know that this will be in the presentation that will be shared with all of you afterwards. So there's no need to write this all down. This will come to you electronically, but we do have all of leadership team on board today, which includes myself, Maggie Butzo. Maggie's been mentioned a couple of times today. She's my chief of staff. She makes everything work and happen for me. Joel Alpern, chief of education and guest experience, also a deputy director. Kathy Heflin, our CFO, treasurer, and also a deputy director, providing me a lot of leadership support. Dave Lowry is VP of marketing. David Burke, VP of science and conservation. Caroline Tate, VP of horticulture. Debbie Miller, VP of Development, Sean O'Neill, our Chief of Police, and Judy Tobin, VP of Human Resources. I don't think I missed any names in there. That's everyone. So Maggie, we can move on, but I just wanted to give all of you a heads up. They are all with us. We just can't have it as with you as we would if we were in person. So COVID-19 update. I think, Maggie, we can just skip to the next slide. So this is just to let you know all the various things that we've been spending our time on. So we spend a lot of time and continue to spend time working through financial impact scenarios and budget reforecasting. This was especially true in our first couple of weeks when we realized we were going to have to close and we needed to figure out how that was going to impact the organization. And Kathy Heflin is going to go through a little bit more of what that looks like, or some high-level bullet points, and we'll be available to answer questions. A lot of human resource management, and that is everything from figuring out how we work with all of you as volunteers, figuring out how we work with staff. There's been just an enormous amount of how do we close, how do people work remotely, how do we, manage staff reentry, who's essential on site, who needs to work from home, a lot going on. How do we manage our daily operations during closure? We're not a business that can just close our doors and reopen when everyone says it's okay. We have a living collection that requires care each and every day, whether we're open or closed. A lot of government relations work, both on a national level with colleagues around the nation and other arboretums and gardens. We've been working with museum peers across the state. All levels of government relations continues to happen. Monitoring state and national guidelines. I'm sure many of you are like us, where we're basically listening every single day that it happens to Mike DeWine's updates on the state of Ohio specifically. A lot of peer coordination, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Reopening reentry plans. So we figured out how to close, then we had to figure out how to reopen. And in the meantime, we have to think forward. We have to be thinking beyond this. This has really changed how we're working right now. But what we also know is this won't be forever. But what it does mean is we're probably going to be operating differently. We are defining what that looks like, but we also know that we have to be thinking about 2 years from now. And so we're already planning for the future. And on top of all of that, we've got business as usual. So as much as possible, there were plenty of things that we planned on doing during this period of time, and we needed to keep those projects up and running as well. Those got a little bit behind because we had to really focus on crisis management, but now we're sort of balancing what's the immediate need that we need to balance with our needs to just get our job done, and then also thinking about the future. So all of this has been happening in the background, and I can't tell you how grateful I am for the support of members, volunteers, donors, and their patience and understanding that we're doing the best we can, making decisions with the information we have, and that information that we have today may be different information than we have tomorrow. I'm also incredibly grateful for the staff of Holden Forest and Gardens. I can't tell you, a crisis really shows you what your team is made of, and I can tell you we have, bar none, an amazing team of individuals. Honestly, I can't imagine having done this with any other group of people. incredibly professional, courageous, supportive, creative, you name it. They've just shown all of their best qualities come out during a time where we're also, we know, managing new levels of anxiety and stress and uncertainty that none of us anticipated a mere, 8-9 weeks ago. All right, next slide. In the midst of all of this, though, I need to share there's really great things. And this is the cool thing, right? We have a team that's managing a crisis and trying to figure out how to get things done. And yet a lot of things continue. So I'll tell you about these pictures in a minute, but horticulture, science, conservation, education, community forestry, all those core mission elements, those keep going. So whether we're open or closed, all of those teams are continuing to work. Our Hort team has been out on the ground. We're just working on staggered shifts. They're working different hours. They're doing desk work at home versus on site. But all of this continues. So Hort, science, conservation, education, if it's mission related, it continues regardless of whether our doors are open for visitors. We've done a lot of outreach programming. Hopefully you've seen a lot of the great work that our marketing team has created with the help of all of our staff across the organization from the program and content side. We hosted an online plant sale. We had a plant sale that was supposed to be live and in person. And at first we thought, we just can't do that plant sale. And then we realized we should at least find this opportunity to provide members and donors with the opportunity to have access to all of these great wildflowers that are Holden grown and managed. And amazing but true, we sold out in, I don't know, basically 2, maybe 3 days. I mean, there were some leftover plants, but we sold the bulk of our plants. We had more than $18,000 in sales, which is more in sales on our specific plants than we had last year. So we're really excited that that unique circumstance was something we could leverage and take advantage of. And it was so much fun to work on the delivery of those plants to our members and donors when they came to pick them up. And we're also thinking, boy, if it was this popular, we need to figure out how to provide even more plants, because there were people who were disappointed because they didn't get their plants, and we're working on that. That just gives us a whole other idea of how much demand there is for the great work that our Hort team does for the organization. These pictures we had these amazing tulips that if we had been open at the garden, there are 500 pots of tulips. You can see the pots in the back of the van there that we wouldn't be putting in the ground, or we could put in the ground, but nobody would enjoy them. So instead we decided to give those tulips to people who could really enjoy them. We started out reaching out to UH and Cleveland Clinic, who both took significant numbers of these plants, both for employees and to put in their healing gardens. We had even more tulips left, so we delivered them to places like the Ronald McDonald House, Western Reserve Hospice. You'll see there's a bench here from the YWCA. All of these great tulips got delivered out to the broad community with a yeoman's effort by any number of people across our organization, but it felt so good to provide a little color and a little joy in people's lives during this time. And I'm very appreciative of the Hort staff for identifying this opportunity and sharing sort of that love out with the community. All right, next slide, Maggie. So we also have a COVID-19 response task force. So how are we tackling this? We have a team that was developed to manage core functions to ensure continuity, clarity, communication, and collaboration in the interim, for all of these various things that I mentioned in that summary slide. We meet every Monday morning at 9 a.m. and figure out what's next, report on what's happened and figure out what's next. And if you go to the next slide, Maggie, the team consists of everyone on leadership team, with the addition of these individuals that probably many of you are familiar with, but all leading sort of these specific areas that are outlined next to each individual's name. And this is not to dismiss or discount that in addition to these folks listed, there are every single person in the organization has contributed to the plans going forward. There is an education team, there's a reopening team, there's a team that thinks about facilities. Holly works with any number of people about technology. Tracy and Judy and Sarah are working on volunteer issues. So across the board, this entire team is working with individuals across the organization to figure out what's next. So I am, and again, incredibly grateful for this team. And this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to who's involved in figuring out what's next. All right, peer organization coordination. So just so you know, we're not doing this alone. I said, we're looking a lot at state and national guidelines. We are following everything the CDC says, the state of Ohio. We worked with the Lake County Health Department in order to get permission to open up the Arboretum grounds. We had to share our plan with them. So really just a lot of support, but on a weekly basis, I meet every Wednesday afternoon with all Cleveland Museum CEOs. Aaron Hefner, who's running our reopening, is meeting with the same group of organizations, but on the operations task force side, how are we reopening and how can we coordinate and are we sharing information? On more than a daily basis, I'm part of a network of APA directors of large gardens across the country. There's about 72 of us who are in regular communication, and it's literally on a daily basis, keeping everyone updated on how we're each making decisions and the choices that we're making. This is from day one, so for the past 9 weeks. And in addition to that, I've been coordinating very closely with my peers, garden directors, just here in Ohio. So Franklin Park Conservatory and also Dawes Arboretum. UH Healthy Restart Playbook, if you're not familiar, University Hospital has built an incredible tool to help us figure out how to reopen safely for customers, guests, and staff. I've been in touch with Arts Cleveland, who has been really helpful in thinking about how we position organizations like ours, not only the arts community, but also there's this interesting world of gardens and arboretum where we cross both environment and arts culture, and how do we get our voice at the table. And so I've been active in trying to figure out how can we raise the profile of our needs and what we're doing as well. And again, this is a little bit of APJ and government relations, but I've been doing a lot of coordination with all of these peers to help make sure that gardens and arboretum aren't sort of lost in the fray when it comes to needing support and help and understanding of what guidelines affect us and what don't. We're a combination of indoor and outdoor, so how do we manage that? Next, Maggie. So I'll keep going while Maggie switches the slide, but there are any number of webinars available by the day. There are so many people sharing information, but I participated in a great webinar and it was led by Scott Allen, who's a professor at John Carroll University, but it sort of clarified for us, and I just wanted to share with you how we're approaching this. So we are not in a period of technical challenges. Technical challenges are those things that we experience every day. We can identify quick solutions. You can look it up in a book and someone can tell you this is the best way to approach it. Unfortunately, but maybe fortunately, because I do believe there are silver linings in everything that we're doing, these are adaptive challenges. So we sometimes don't even know what all the questions are that we should be asking. There's no playbook for us to follow. It requires a great deal of flexibility and experimentation and thought as we're thinking through this. And this experience that we now are in, and this doesn't relate just to Holden Forest and Gardens or just to businesses, we know for all of us, this is going to change how we approach the world in a much broader and significant way. So we're needing to address every issue that is presented to us by saying, looking at what are our core values, what's our core mission elements, and then how might we actually rethink our business model? The phrase that I've learned recently from a great Lisa D'Amour, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with her, but I did a webinar with her the other day, and she talks about how are we going to build it back better. So all of us are needing to build it back, and it's not about maybe surviving and thriving, which is another phrase, but how do we build it back better? And Maggie, if you go to the next slide, it just sort of shows how navigating adaptive challenges works. And that's just this idea that we're working with internally on, we're asking questions, and then we need to experiment. We've never created these solutions before. So we're going to be experimenting a lot. We're going to be figuring out what works. We're going to be learning from that, and it may create more questions, and it will definitely create an opportunity for us to shift how we're responding. So we can't guarantee that that everything that we've come up with the answer and that's how it's going to work. It's just not. This is a whole new world. And so we're going to be experimenting and doing the best we can and learning from those experiments as we move forward and getting feedback on what works and what doesn't. So that just gives you a sense of how we're trying to approach this as we're thinking about the challenges the organization is facing. So there'll be question time in just a couple of slides, but what I thought we'd give you all this context and then we'll jump in. Kathy, I'll turn to you to give a little bit of an update on the financial picture of the organization and where we're at.
Sure, thanks, Jill. So what I wanted to do is kind of share with you a little bit about, where we were pre-COVID and where we're projecting to be post-COVID. So coming into, you know, what turned into the pandemic, we were having really strong results. So revenue was up $576,000 over budget. Expense, you know, we were realizing expense savings of about $233,000, and we had a net operating surplus to budget of about $809,000. So thankfully, we kind of came into this situation in really good shape. We have gone several rounds, you know, we've done several rounds of forecasting. And right now, you know, based on what we know today, obviously uncertainty continues, but we're looking at about a $3.8 million negative impact to our revenue budget. And we've really gone through, assessed all of our expenses, both payroll and operating expenses, and identified about $2.2 million of savings to our budget. But that still leaves us with a net operating deficit of about $1.6 million to our budget. So there's several things that we're doing right now. We've applied for and received PPP loans of $1.4 million across our 2 campuses. We estimate that about $1.2 million is going to be forgiven based on our payroll numbers. We initiated immediate temporary layoffs, and we've also required all staff to take mandatory unpaid leave of absence following our PPP period. What the Payment Protection Plan loan has allowed us to do is to bring back all of the required seasonals to kind of get the garden and arboretum back up and into shape, ready for reopening for an 8-week period. So that's been very helpful. It's allowed David to bring a lot of his interns back for that 8-week period. Prior to receiving the PPP loan, we also initiated, along with these temporary layoffs, pay rate decreases across the board, and we banded them by pay rate. So obviously those employees that are in the higher salary band were required to take larger pay cuts. And once we get through this 8-week PPP, we'll reinitiate those pay rate cuts following the PPP period. And then we've also eliminated all non-essential expenses, as well as all non-essential open and new positions. We've also applied for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, also known as EIDL, to kind of help us cover any expenses. And, you know, we are also considering, you know, maybe not taking endowment draws to allow the endowment to recover and, you know, borrow against those EIDL loan. We've also been meeting bi-weekly. The investment committee has been meeting with our arboretum and trust advisors to make sure that we're best positioning the trust and the endowment for the future. So constantly assessing that. But, you know, obviously I'm showing a $1.6 million negative deficit. Hopefully, and those rules keep changing too, we'll have $1.2 million of the loan forgiven, which leaves us about a $400,000 gap to the original budget. So that's where we are right now. Obviously, we're going through another round of reforecasting, you know, rolling up those numbers and continually evaluating our cash flow position. But, you know, obviously this is an ongoing exercise for all of us, but that kind of gives you a peek into where we're projecting to end the year.
All right, thanks, Kathy. And in addition to, Kathy mentioned the investment committee is meeting weekly. I also want to, we've had multiple meetings with the finance committee and with the board of directors. Honestly, we probably had more meetings in the past 8 or 9 weeks of various board committees than we had in the entire fiscal year to date, just because the board has been very engaged and active and supportive of our direction and supportive of figuring out the best solutions. And I should emphasize that we're being really creative on that revenue side. The development team has been working really hard to figure out how to continue to fill gaps on the contributed income side, really dependent on membership, individual giving. The board has stepped up and launched a challenge campaign within themselves, which we're now going to turn to asking our broad donor base that if they are in the position, we know not everybody will be and can, be in a position right now, but the board has been incredibly supportive, helping us launch those initiatives because we also had to do things like cancel Woodland Twilight and Harvest Moon. So 2 significant fundraising events. So there's been a significant impact on fundraising revenue when it comes to foundation and corporate giving. Corporations are just in a different position given the economy, and foundations have understandably chosen to redirect their support in most cases to human service organizations right now, because we all know there's a significant need to take care of a lot of people who need help. So we're looking at a lot of things, and we're hoping to get earned revenue up and running, but it's going to be a challenge because really the only type of earned revenue that we're anticipating even being able to bring in between now and the end of the year in any way is admission and ticketing. And that's why it's so important that we figure out how to reopen safely and within guidelines that create, a good environment for staff, for guests, and for volunteers when we can start bringing volunteers back. So a lot going on, but again, big thanks to Kathy for all her work too in figuring out. It is a complicated process, figuring out all the pieces. Again, I was saying there are webinars. I think there's a webinar every single day to address the new rules when it comes to how we're managing the economic side. Maggie, do you want to go to the next slide? So the next slide will be Joel Alpern, and I'll just introduce Joel to come on and talk a little bit about reopening. Just so you know, we are moving forward. It was really awesome to turn the page one day and say, okay, we finished talking about closing. Now let's figure out how we can start to ramp up to reopening. So Joel, I'll turn it over to you to run through the Arboretum and the garden reopening plans.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. I'm pleased to announce, as I'm sure almost all of you would know, that the Holden Arboretum opened to members on Tuesday morning. We've had good crowds both days so far. The rain will probably hold us back a little bit the next few days. We are open right now, and likely for the foreseeable future, and we'll see this at both campuses, where we'll be open on a reservation basis to members, or once we start ticketing to the general public, advanced tickets online for them as well. What this does is it allows us to control the total number of folks on site at any given time, which allows us then to ensure that you're going to be able to easily maintain that social distancing guidelines while you're here. So I think that that's going to provide a really solid experience. It's a couple extra steps, obviously, for visiting, but I think it's a good trade-off for safety at this standpoint. So that's been going really well. I was out there yesterday. It was a beautiful day. We're going to be slowly rolling in features as we proceed and as we get more information about how our crowds look and everything. So if things look good, we'll up the cap on the number of people we'll have in there as well. I would expect to begin general admission ticketing within the next week or so, so that we can allow the general public to enjoy as well. The Canopy Walk and Emergent Tower for the time being will remain closed, but we are working on an analysis there to figure out if and how we can safely reopen those given current constraints. Restrooms at the Arboretum are presently closed, but pleased to say that we've just received some approval from Lake County Health Department with our plan for allowing the visitor center restrooms to reopen. So that may happen as early as tomorrow. There's just a couple things that we need to get in order there. Let's see if I've covered everything. We are asking all staff who are working indoors or coming in contact with guests to wear masks while they are working and on the premises. Outside staff will put on a mask when they are closer to folks, but they may be working kind of more remotely and not wearing them. And we are strongly encouraging all of our guests to wear masks as well to protect others and themselves. With regard to the Cleveland Botanical Garden, We have targeted a date for opening. We've not publicly announced anything, but we're currently targeting the last week of May to be able to reopen the garden. That will be just the grounds, just the outdoor gardens. However, we will have a path that will bring guests through the building and out to the exterior gardens, and also provide access to the restrooms. And from there, we will begin to build up other things. But at first, the glass houses won't be open. We're still working on what food service will look like at that time. The Hershey Children's Garden will likely be closed at first. And we will be doing the same reservation system and timed entry ticketing for guests to control flow and to control the size of crowds. The mask policy will be the same, and that's about it for the garden. You know, we're really looking forward to it, and then we will step up those plans as we see some data and we see things are looking good. We'll be looking, especially at the garden, at our peer museums and organizations, because we have such a large indoor sort of museum-like component in the gardens with the glass houses. We'll be coordinating and tracking with those groups in terms of reopening plans within there. So I don't have a timeline for reopening the glass houses, but we hope that will come as soon as it's possible and that we can safely do it. We'll control entry into those when we do.
Great, thanks, Joel. So I think, and I know that Tracy and Judy, but this is a point where we can ask questions, and I'm not sure if you've got questions through the chat box yet, or people are still just processing or thinking about everything that we just shared.
Hi, Jill. We haven't had a lot of questions quite yet, but one question that did come up was, where are we with the Wade Oval situation, the Wade Oval decision and the consequences for HF&G when it comes at this point?
Sure. So as you might have seen, we received a positive ruling or a ruling that we're pleased with from the appeals court on sort of our position as far as being able to charge admission, being able to have a fence around the garden. So we're happy with the appeals court decision. We're a little bit in a holding pattern right now because there is always a next step. So we weren't at we have to wait to see the next step through the court. And they have put a number of things on hold right now, just because courts have been closed as well. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern, but I'll tell you the most recent ruling by the appeals court, we felt very good about, and we're in a good position, and we're waiting just to advance any next steps based on the timing of the current court's position. So there's, we're not through this yet, but we were pleased with the ruling that the appeals court provided. Oops, Judy, you're on mute.
We had another question about the state of the endowment.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Kathy, do you want to talk a little bit about the endowment?
Sure. So if for all of you that have been watching the market, you can see how very volatile it is. So, where the endowment is today could be completely different than tomorrow. But, we're down anywhere between 8 and 10%, but we're outperforming the market, which is very good. We continue to take draws as needed to fuel our operations as budgeted. So we're being cautious, and we're just making sure that we're making any reallocations that are necessary, but really the investment policy is really for the long term, and it's performing exactly as we would expect it to. We've done some small tweaks to it, but you know, the good news, it is outperforming the market, but, you know, we'll continue to manage our draws. And if we don't need to take one to give it time to kind of recover from that 8 to 10% decline, we will.
And I'll just make one comment on the endowment. The good, or that impacts us as an organization as a whole. So we're in a challenging financial position, there is no doubt. And every area contributed, earned an endowment income. An endowment income typically provides, Kathy, about 50% of our overall operating budget. Every single area has been significantly impacted. The earned income most, followed by probably contributed income, and then the endowment. The good news for us is we entered this crisis in a strong position, and we have a solid foundation for the organization moving forward. So we're not as at risk as some organizations that don't have an endowment at all, or we're entirely reliant on earned income. Those folks have been hit the most. But, and as Kathy mentioned on that endowment piece, the investment committee is meeting every other week with all of our advisors for our endowment to monitor and make adjustments as needed. So again, really great board support on that front.
All right, we have some questions about our exhibits. One is what happened with the Rainforest Adventure and will it come back? Another is yeah, so I'll let you answer that and then I'll go down the list.
Oh, sure. Yeah, happy to answer that. So unfortunately, we only had about a week of Rainforest Adventure that we were able to show to the public before we were forced to close. And regrettably, the term of the exhibition was only through the end of April. And so it's all been packed up and dismantled and will be shipped out quite soon and by our team. And it's, you know, really distressing for me and our team that we weren't able to share it longer with the public. But it could always be a consideration to bring it back in the future. And the Amazing Butterflies exhibit that we had in 2019 was quite popular with the public. So it would definitely be something I'd consider bringing back, you know, when it's a little bit better environment to do so.
Great, thanks, Joel. And there's another question about whether goblins in the garden will occur this year, and also is Buckeye Buds open for children?
So we have not made a decision on goblins in the garden at this point. It's a little bit further out. As we get closer to the place where we'd be planning that, we'll take a much closer look. I would say that all indications are that we will be social distancing for some time, and that there will likely be limitations on crowd sizes and things like that. So if I had to guess, I would say that we would need to think about doing an event like that a little bit differently, maybe spread out over time, maybe with less contact, more controlled numbers of folks. So we are going to be looking at those types of options, but we haven't made any decisions at this point.
Thanks, Joel. You're going to stay on the hot seat here.
No problem.
Not that it's a hot seat. So what is the person limit to each 30-minute sign-up slot currently at the Arboretum and I guess for the future of CBG? And then how did we determine this? Is this some type of percentage based on?
So what we're looking at right now is we started conservatively, and that's going to be a tough one because I can't give you the exact number on the number per hour, but we have a formula that we created for that. So currently we're set to accommodate about 600 folks throughout the course of a day. We think that's pretty conservative. So as we open for like a week and whatnot, then we'll see like what that looks like, and we'll bump it up. I can tell you that the first 2 days, we haven't reached the total capacity. So we will quickly bump it up if it seems like we're not getting too crowded. So I think so far the indications are pretty good. So
Joel?
yeah, we'll ask everybody to just bear with us as we do, per Jill's slide earlier, we're gonna experiment, we're gonna look at the results, we're gonna respond to it quickly, and then we'll loop back. So that's really the approach we're taking with this.
Hey, Joel, I just want to clarify too, when you said we're at about 600 people per day right now at the Arboretum. By reaching capacity, you mean that we haven't filled all of those reservation slots. We also know we
That's
have.
correct, yeah. And my understanding is we haven't sold out of too many of the slots of this individual slots as well. So there have been a few that have hit capacity. So we're looking at that really closely, but I think we'll get it all sorted out, because I think we'll actually be able to accommodate most people who want to visit on most days. Where it's going to get a little tricky is when we get to like the really beautiful June Saturdays or weekends, where you'll want to try to look earlier, book those reservations a little bit earlier, in order to ensure a spot, because those are the ones that could more fill up. But those days are actually a pretty small percentage.
Thanks, Joel.
Oh, Joel, do you want to answer the garden side of that question though too, and how we came to those limits?
Sure. So with the botanical garden's a little bit different. And what we did there is we're really governing it by the interior space at the garden and how many folks will let in. Because what we need to be able to do is, if it rains heavily and people start flooding back in, we need to make sure that we have enough room in there to safely accommodate those folks. And so right now, that ends up being about 150 people at any given time. And I don't remember offhand the total per day, but what I can tell you with that is that actually the way that we can do the garden actually would accommodate in almost every case our regular attendance that you're used to there. It will be spread out a little bit more, but we can accommodate almost the same number of people that we would at any given time.
And I'll say the formula that we used for the garden was based on, and Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, but we used the AMDA formula of one person for every about 100 square feet or so. And that's a formula that was developed working with current social distance formulas. And it's the formula being used for other indoor museum spaces. So even if you read articles about the Rock Hall or the Cleveland Museum of Art, you'll note that they followed that same formula to determine their indoor capacity. So we're all very consistent, and it's fortunately an indoor a standard that was developed looking across the board based on your usable square footage for guests.
That's right, Jill, thanks.
Right, so there is a question about stickwork. So I think, Joel, this might be in the presentation later, if I'm not, no? So there is a question about, stickworks and the status of that.
Yeah, so what we've been looking at with stickwork, because we were not able to obviously install the exhibition, it would have been installed in March, would be open at the garden already. We have been working with the artist to identify an alternative time. And we are also looking at an alternative venue, which would be the Arboretum, that allows us substantially more space out there to have a sculpture like that up, but be able to support more distancing, because a piece like that's going to attract people to it. And so we want to make sure those folks would have plenty of space to distance themselves while they were getting a look. What we are looking at this point is bringing it to the Arboretum in September, and the sculpture would last roughly about a year out there. That's not completely confirmed yet, but it is what we're looking at as an alternative at this point.
Okay, thanks. Switching gears here, there's a question about it, Kathy, this is probably for you or Jill. Is there a per year limit on the endowment withdrawal?
So the endowment withdrawal, the calculations for the endowment draws are made during the budget season. So the draws for this year were predetermined during the budget. That's what we're watching, is to make sure that we've got cash available for those draws. You know, as the endowments are impacted by the market. There is a portion of each endowment that is what we call board designated. So should we need additional funds, the board could make the decision to allow an additional draw for the endowment. So obviously this is not the best time to be taking money out of your investments. So, you know, we're trying to take the minimum requirements, you know, to meet our cash needs at this time. But should we need to draw additional funds, the board could make that authorization.
So, and I'll just add, for those of you who are familiar with sort of standard good practice, we never withdraw more than 5% of the earnings, and hopefully we're earning more than that every year. So the endowment keeps growing and reinvesting back in itself. And the we also, you take that percentage following a 16-month rolling average. So it's not something that's changing constantly. We have a formula, as Kathy mentioned, it's a formula, but largely based on a 16-month rolling average.
There was an additional question too, is, you know, how do we protect the principal of the endowment? We do not draw against, you know, the permanent portion of the endowment. I know there was a question about CBG practices in the past. We will not draw on that endowment. And that's why, you know, we're doing everything that we can through PPP or EIDL, all of those options to help ensure cash flow at both organizations.
All right, thanks, Kathy and Jill.
Sorry, Judy, I have one more. So the finance, I think this is important to really talk about the finance stuff because it's all public information. But what this also means, we would never touch the principal of an endowment. It's just not good. We're not doing that. But what that means is that we continue to make, and that's why we need to make really tough budgeting decisions, because we will be building a budget. We've managed fiscal year 20 and our fiscal year ends September 30th. We know right now that we will not have the same budget going into fiscal year 21. We don't know exactly what that will look like. We're currently figuring out our revenue model, which will be endowment, contributed income, and earned revenue. All of those will be down. So we won't have the same size budget that we had last year. So in order to avoid drawing from a principal, we look at budget cuts. So just so you know, we're looking at what that picture will be, and we're going to be making, you know, difficult decisions, but really though, making those decisions based on what is core mission and how do we keep this organization moving forward. And as an organization, as a garden and arboreta, we are more relevant now than we have ever been. I want to emphasize that we look at a lot of studies on cultural institutions, and there's been a lot of data coming out on where will people be comfortable and where do they intend to go when stay-at-home orders are listed. And gardens and arboreta were never at the top of that list, but they've now moved to the top of that list. So we have a real opportunity, if we can manage the safe reentry and reopening of both of our campuses, to leverage this idea and to really allow people to do exactly what we've been wanting them to do from the very beginning, which is to get out and connect with nature. So we have a real opportunity. We're just working to figure out how to do it in this new environment. And that will also really help us to continue to grow as an organization. So we are managing things pretty conservatively when it comes to our financial picture, but also I will tell you, there's a real sense of optimism when it comes to people's interest in our type of organization, differently than what they might have had in the past.
I see there was one more question on
Yep.
projections for the balance of the year and what assumptions have we made about revenue. We really have been, to Jill's point, conservative. We are saying that we are getting no earned income for the balance of the fiscal year other than admissions and parking. And we have to make those assumptions based on what we've seen so far. You know, we cannot do facility rentals at this point, large group gatherings. We can't do any major exhibits. So we've taken all of that out of the budget. And we're also in contact with our foundations, a lot of whom are redirecting their funds to Health and Human Service organizations. So, you know, we do feel that we've had to be extremely conservative to plan on the expense side for, you know, like I had a $3.8 million gap in revenue. So at this point, we are not assuming business as usual anytime in this fiscal year.
And on the contributing side, in addition to corporate and foundation money has been dramatically reduced. So we basically said, we've got what we've got that already has come in. And unless there's a guaranteed like amount of money that they'd already committed that gift will arrive between now and the end of September, we're not counting it. Membership and individual giving, which is honestly the most important side of our fundraising pool always. We have recalculated those projections, and fortunately, again, honestly, contributed income was doing really well on the membership and individual side, and that really helped provide a buffer. But we're still challenged because we've cut our projections back that from, it would have been April through September, we're projecting 50% of our original budget. So it's pretty conservative. We're seeing doing a little bit better than that in this brief window on membership. We're doing better than that projection, but still pretty conservative.
Hey, thanks. I think we have a couple more questions, but I think we'll move on right now. One is regarding Woodland Twilight. So maybe we'll catch those questions at the end, but I think it's important for us to move on right now.
Great, thanks. So Maggie, do you want to move to the next slide? All right, so new strategic plan, so future focus. So we completed a strategic planning process in December of 2019. On December 4th, the board voted to approve the new strategic plan that I'm sharing with you. It's actually going to be featured in the next issue of the magazine, which will be hitting your mailboxes in the next few weeks or so. But I'm really excited by the direction of the plan. And also one thing we did at the very beginning as a leadership team and as an organization when this crisis hit, we were like, oh, we were just about to launch this new strategic plan. How does this new circumstance change things? And we went through the mission, the vision, the goals, the initiatives, the action steps. And we were really pleased to be like, wow, it holds. And not only does it hold, it holds, like, it puts us in a strong position. So what we know is the plan, we are a strong and firm believer in the direction that the organization developed, you know, as far as our vision for the future over the past year and a half, and really pleased that with or without COVID, what we found is some of the specific action steps may change, but the mission, vision, goals, and even the initiatives beneath that really still remain the same. It's just how we get them done may be a little bit different. So I'll start to share all of this with you. So next slide, Maggie. So Maggie, did we miss one slide, the data sources?
I believe that's coming up.
Okay, that's great. So I just don't want to speak. Okay, so we'll go to the mission vision first. So our new mission and vision, Maggie, you can skip to the next slide, is new mission. Holden Forest and Gardens connects people with the wonder, beauty, value of trees and plants to inspire action for healthy communities. Our new vision, all communities transformed into vibrant places where trees, plants, and people thrive. What I'll speak to you about this mission and vision statement, the things that get us really excited is that people and communities are in both of these. So it's really about how does the work we do on our campuses and our research programs and our conservation programs, education programs, how does that serve the community that as a nonprofit we are here to serve? So it's really about the people, the community, those around us. How do we do that? Through the wonder, beauty, and value of what we know. We have these beautiful places. We all are already baked into this idea of the importance of the natural world around us. And how do we get people to share that and be inspired to sort of be with us in this direction that we're going? And how do we really create healthy communities for all of us to live in? And I think what's really interesting about this is, boy, are people outside walking, and are people wanting to get connected? Are people wanting us to reopen? Because when we've been put in this current environment that we have been, and we're all stuck inside and not able to go and do things that we might normally be doing, people are really seeing the value of having a world around you that you can walk in and enjoy and take advantage of. And then this vision is just that, you know, our connection and connecting people to this natural world around us will allow everyone, regardless of where you live, and regardless of where you've come from, to really thrive in an environment that is filled with trees and plants. So it's all about people, and it's all about connecting people to that world around us. Next slide. So where did this come from? So that mission and vision, and then the goals that I'm going to share, we did a lot of research and a lot of talking. We didn't want to create something within our own little bubble. Instead, we went out and we asked a lot of people for help, and we got to where we ended by listening. So we conducted, we hired an outside firm, and they conducted more than 37 one-on-one interviews. And I think when we were all done, it says 37, but we actually ended up talking to more than 100 people directly one-on-one. We did a survey, which I'm sure hopefully all of you participated in, or as many of you as possible did. But we received a 13% response rate, which is really great. And we got responses from basically 2,900 people who helped inform our decision-making. We held 4 focus groups. We went on a group of us, board and staff, and a shifting group of us, it wasn't always the same people, visited 11 gardens and arboreta across the country to see what were other people doing and what could we learn from them. We received constant feedback from the board and all staff throughout the process in meetings and facilitated discussion. And we had a core planning team, which was a mix of board and staff, who helped sort of take all of that feedback that we were getting along the way and figure out how to process it and bring it back to say, okay, we heard this is where we think we're going. So a lot of rich information guided this process. This was not something that was done in one person's office or in a conference room. It was done with the community. Next. So where do we want to go with this new mission and vision? So what do we hope we will look like? We hope we'll be well known, or maybe I'll say better known, and more deeply connected to the community, a financially healthy organization, a diverse organization that is welcoming to a much broader and extended audience of individuals across Northeast Ohio, maybe a little bit broader, but we'll say across Northeast Ohio, and that we're really operating a world-class environmentally conscious campus or campuses. And what do we hope will come from that? What do we hope to observe? How will we make change? That those who come to visit us and participate in our programs will leave more knowledgeable and inspired to act. Communities are following paths modeled by us, that what we're sharing through ourselves and in our work with partners will have a positive impact on the environment around us. Communities will be healthier and more vibrant because of the work that we do. And last but not least, that plants and trees are more plentiful, more resilient in this changing world that we're all a part of. So there's Joel, maybe on your camera and now on the slide too. So just in case you can't see him on your screen, he's on the slide now. But each goal, so there are 5 institutional goals that I'll walk through. Each goal that we selected was, we identified one leadership team person to be sort of the key point person for that goal, to shepherd it through, to coordinate the many people and program areas that fall underneath this each goal. So it happens to be that Joel was assigned to be that key leader for goal number 1, which is to build a more engaged, connected, and collaborative community presence. And this goal encompasses a few different areas. And Maggie, if you want to go to the next slides, we'll talk a little bit about what's under this. So this is our education programs on all of our community engagement. You'll see here, you know, we have Margot out doing a tree talk for Case Western students. You'll see community forestry with Courtney there planting a tree. We have both on-site education programs there at the Arboretum, and then we are also out in the classroom. So this goal is really about how are we engaging and connecting and working with the community to share our knowledge. So it involves a lot of different facets of the organization. If you want to go to the next slide, Maggie. It also, it also brings to us, if you could see all of the initiatives listed below, our community awareness and the profile we have. So it's things like, are we getting a seat at the table, you know, when conversations are happening about the natural world around us in public spaces and connecting people through nature. So it may be through programs at City Club. it's very much coming through in our engagement in advancing the Cleveland Tree Plan and being a part of the Cleveland Tree Coalition. And I'll give an overall statement too before we move to the next goal, that the challenging piece that we have, and this is also, I think, the sign of a solid plan or set of goals, it's sometimes hard to know exactly where a certain program or initiative should fit, because things flow across each of our program goals, but we picked the area where we think it best fit, but we know that there are elements of each goal that cross over into other goals. So community forestry, you'll see that we have a goal that's related to environmental stewardship and climate change. We could have put community forestry in there, and it is there too, but it is also part of this community outreach piece. So it's somewhat of a fluid plan, and we make choices, but you can see sort of the broader set of priorities as far as where we're putting programs. Next slide, Maggie. So the next goal is being shepherded and spearheaded by Caroline Tate. If you haven't had a chance to meet Caroline, I hope you do soon. She arrived very late December, basically January, as our new Vice President of Horticulture and Collections. Goal number 2 is to deliver a visitor experience that inspires wonder and highlights the beauty and value of trees and plants. So why don't you go to the next slide, Maggie, and we'll talk a little bit about this. So this is our visitor experience and really our base and our beginning. It's all of our horticulture. It's our gardens, it's our trails, it's the plants that we know and love that make the experience of the arboretum and garden what we know. And Caroline is working really closely with our HORT team. And as I said, the HORT team has continued to work throughout our closure to really create and care for the base of who we are. If we are nothing else, we are a garden and we are an arboretum. Also included in this goal are some things that we were talking about earlier, things like what are the visitor experience elements. And this falls a little bit under Joel's area as far as the direct relation, but it's the exhibitions. It's things like our holiday program, Rainforest, it's the Trains exhibition. And what you'll see on the far right of this slide is stick work, or it's an example of stick work. They're different at every organization, but it's all of those exhibitions and how do we engage people in our campus in a way that isn't just an outside exhibition that we put within our, sort of building footprint or ground footprint, but how do we make that exhibition connect to the garden and arboretum experience and connecting people with nature. So next, Maggie. So another place where honestly there are volunteers in this picture, but a key area, and someone asked about goblins, but you all are deeply connected to the many programs, and we can't do these programs without you. But a key part of this goal is what programs are we developing that attract people and bring people here, and perhaps in some ways, both with exhibitions and programs, they might be people who might not come just to visit the garden, but we get them to come by offering a really great program and a really great opportunity that's unique and special to us as a garden and arboretum, and but gets them excited and interested and also engages people of all ages. We see the plant sale here and also goblins and some great kids programming in children's garden, etc. So next slide. So goal number 3, catalyze action and model solutions for environmental stewardship and climate change. David Burke, Vice President of Science and Conservation, is spearheading this goal. And this is really where all of our science, conservation, community forestry work fits. Maggie, do you want to go to the next slide? So what does this mean to us? So we have any number of research programs. So keep in mind, everything that I'm sharing today on are merely examples. There are so many things that fall under each of this goals. So I'm just picking things that make sense. But one thing that we're really thinking about is the climate is changing and what's our role in modeling good stewardship so that we can respond to the changing environment and climate around us. So in the photo here, I think these are some of Katie Stugel's students working on some of their research projects. My hunch is that that's in the Working Woods area, but I'm not sure. We're also working on a climate change toolkit that was developed by a peer garden, Phipps Conservatory, but we're really looking at a whole toolkit that they developed that will help us think about how are we making choices as far as how we operate and run our organization, everything from how we're using plastics, how we're managing our landscapes, to what's not on here is the type of research that we're doing as an organization. Also included in this, and Maggie, you can flip to the next slide, is environmental stewardship. So these are all the great programs that we're doing where we're really connecting people to how we're taking the earth forward. So a couple of the slides here, we have a picture here that's from, oh, I'm forgetting the name. David, are you on the line? How come I'm having a brain freeze?
Yes, I'm here.
Workshop,
So
Canopy Walk.
Canopy Walk. Mhm.
What program was that? It was right when I started.
So that might have been Fizz Fest. So that was
Fizz
an
Fest, that's
NSF-funded
it.
program that brought scientists from all over the country to look at tree growth and physiology using our Canopy Walk and emerging
Yep.
network.
So I can't believe I forgot Fizz Fest name, but that was such a great experience because if you recall, and a number of volunteers were involved in this, it took this great visitor experience and created a science experience for professional scientists, academics, for volunteers who were engaged. There were school groups engaged. It's really, I think, a highlight example of what we're doing. So, and you'll see the other programs that are, the other photos of different types of work that we're doing, but this is all about how are we connecting people to that natural world around us, and how are we really getting people to understand their role and our role really in environmental stewardship. So we'll go to the next slide. So the fourth goal, and I'm actually the point on this goal, it's increase diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusiveness at every level within the organization. So we're really at the beginning stages of this. We know that if we're going to grow long-term, we really need to start engaging a much broader audience, and we really need to understand, are we offering a welcoming experience, and are we sharing what we have and the gifts that we have for the community with everyone, and is everyone feeling like we are something they can access? So if you go to the next slide, Maggie, so we're at the beginning. So where we started, and actually this has been completed and we're going to share it out with staff, but we started with a baseline. We needed to really understand where we were at. So we started with a survey, a DEAI survey that went out to all staff. We are going to be sharing those results both with staff and with board. And that'll give us a baseline for how we develop a work plan. We'll also be doing this at the board level. How do we make sure that our board is representative and welcoming to all who might want to be interested in our organization and helping, advance our mission forward? And we've also done a lot of work. The picture of the REI workshops here is just that we've also been doing a lot of work. I've been through these workshops. There's a number of other staff, but really putting time into training our staff and getting an understanding about what it means to be a diverse and welcoming organization. More to come on that as well. And lastly, Kathy, who you've heard from already today, our fifth and final goal is to consistently achieve sustainable financial results that enable growth and capital investment. Kathy is the lead on this goal. She shared a lot today about sort of where we're at currently and how we're managing, making sure that even in a time like this, we are ensuring the sustainability of our organization and the financial health. And if you go to the next slide, don't quite know always what to depict here, but we're really looking at dashboards and how things are working. And I like this slide only because this was actually just through the end of December. But one thing I like looking at is the things we need to think about when we're thinking about how we're going to grow our organization, or when we're thinking about earned revenue and where people come. If you look at the second bar graph, that is total attendance, there's really interesting things going on here in that you'll see that depending upon the month, the Arboretum may be much stronger in visitation, but what we also know about that yellow bar is that those are more member visits than paid admission visits. In December, it flips and we're getting a lot more visitation at the garden, but what we know is that that blue bar will also include a greater percentage of paid visitors. So these are the types of scenarios and data that we're working through to help us figure out what types of programs we put at each campus and where we can sort of start to bring in a balance of maybe we need to invite even more people and figure out, can we attract a newer audience to the Arboretum that's coming for the first time? And at the garden, how do we grow even more sort of those continued audiences of both new people and membership engagement as well? So I think with that, So all of the folks that were pictured and are spearheading these goals are on the line, as well as the rest of leadership team who might not be a specific point person for a goal, but who are intimately involved in carrying these through and are key partners on every single goal. We're happy to answer any questions on this section of the presentation, which I have flown through. I have no idea what time it is. It's 11:18, so we have about 12 more minutes in theory. So any questions?
Yeah, I think, Jill, there's a question about, and this might be for Joel, on the education and school programs and how this, works into the strategic plan. What we're doing with the, during the COVID crisis, and then also how are we addressing this through this strategic planning?
Judy, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I missed the beginning.
Sure, okay. It's, what are we doing with the educational and school programming? I think we probably need to answer the question, what are we doing during this time period? And then also, how does it work into the strategic plan?
So with respect to the current COVID-19 environment, we've obviously had to cancel many of our programs and classes, really all of them, for the last couple of months. And we will be moving, with respect to public programs, we'll be moving some of our adult classes, many of them, into online formats. Some of them will be like courses where if you register, you would potentially come to the garden and pick up a kit. And then a class might be delivered over Zoom or other platforms as well. So we've got a really good plan together for that, and you'll be hearing more soon. Probably within the next week or two, we'll be rolling out the online course schedule. But for the time being, at least for the immediate like summer classes, we're not seeing a lot of opportunity to be able to do some of our in-person classes due to the sizes of the group gatherings. Now, if that changes, we'll change our offerings. School programs obviously have been canceled as well. We're unclear what the environment will be as school resumes. And as a parent myself, very anxious to know. But we are in contact with a lot of our major districts right now. They're also in a bit of a holding pattern and not knowing, what they're going to be able to do, where their budgets are going to be. And we are developing remote learning options that we can use for those schools that are interested. And we are getting feedback from them in terms of like how best to structure that type of work so that they can use it. So it's a lot of the programs with respect to COVID-19 are a little bit fluid, but we are quickly developing those alternative options should we need them.
And Joel, do you see, where does this fit into the strategic plan? Just education and programming?
Well, education and programming in general is essential to the strategic plan. If you look, particularly with regard to goal number 1, which is the goal that I'm leading on. So what we would like to see overall with respect to that, and a couple of the key initiatives that we have in there, would be looking for ways to expand our reach into communities that we haven't typically served as in depth, or demographics that we haven't typically served as in depth as what our core audience is. So that might translate into developing partnerships and relationships, say with local organizations in the city of Cleveland, and also figuring out ways that we are able to offer some of our programming or develop special programming that would allow us to provide scholarships or reduce fees so that financial capability would be less of a hurdle to folks as well. So it's an essential aspect of our entire strategic plan going forward. Before we experienced this disruption, I was working with Sharon Graper and Ellie Rial, who's our two managers in the education department, and we've been in the process of developing a 5-year growth plan for our education programs, which would include, expansion of our programs really at all levels. That work was set back a bit, just being in a little bit of a crisis management mode. But I would say the silver lining that we're seeing right now as a result of this crisis is that some of the things that we had just been in the really early phases of exploring, like offering remote learning options, we were going to do that anyway, but this really forced our hand to rapidly develop and test those types of programs. And we don't see it, long term, we're not looking at remote learning to replace our on-site experiences. There's going to be a short period of time where it does because it has to, but we're going to learn a lot through this process, and we'll be reaching out obviously to our members and class participants as well to help develop as we go. So I think it's a bright future, and really looking forward to seeing where we go, and also having these whole new streams of programming with the remote learning that we think can become a more permanent feature as we go forward.
Thanks, Joel. There's a few other questions, but I think we have a couple more slides to hit, and we are coming up on our time limit here. We've got about 6 minutes left. So how about if we move on to the next slide, and then we can try to answer some of these questions either at the end or.
Yeah, Judy, this is Jill. I'm willing to stay on a little bit past, I think, past 11:30. Just wait, before I make that commitment. I think I can. I can stay on for about an extra 15 minutes, but I do think it's smart to get through this update slide. And then if volunteers have a hard stop, they can jump off the call, because there are a couple of questions that I think we might want to address.
Exactly. Okay. So Tracy, kicking it off to you.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been a number of questions in the private chat, but also emails about volunteers returning. Right now, just know that Sarah and I have suspended actively recruiting new volunteers. We are focusing our efforts on our current volunteers and on the task at hand, which is certainly developing a process for resuming volunteer activities. And this is a process that begins with you, begins with our volunteers, and with your thinking about what is the right decision for you in terms of your knowledge of your health or your personal circumstances or your comfort level with returning to volunteer. And Sarah and I have been aware that there's a spectrum in terms of that comfort level. We had volunteers who reached out to us within about 3 days of closing, asking when they could return to volunteer. We have others who are deeply concerned about being on our campuses and volunteering. So just know that we respect and support whatever decision you make that you believe is in your best interest. And certainly part of that process is our own plans for resuming volunteer activities. It is right now a deliberative case-by-case process that is built around our asking ourselves 3 questions when we're thinking about resuming any volunteer activity. And those are, is it safe? Is it necessary? And is it well planned? Is it safe? Is it an activity where we can control or avoid risk in such a way that the volunteer or other volunteers or staff or guests will take on little to no added exposure to coronavirus? Is it necessary? Is it something that is it necessary to happen right now? Is it important to our operations? Is it important to our mission? Or can it maybe be delayed a little bit until things settle down a bit? Is it necessary for volunteers to perform? Or is it something that perhaps staff who are already on our campuses could cover? And then, is it well planned? Have we really thought through every component of a certain activity in terms of what parts of it can just go forward the way that they always have? What are the areas that we need to maybe address things or modify processes in some way? And what are the parts that maybe we just need to let go of, that maybe just can't happen the way they used to happen? And then certainly communication through all that. We've been really dedicated to trying to communicate to volunteers, and that continues as we resume these activities, communication to you, but also means of hearing from you. A few of those activities have resumed. Of the 82 position descriptions we have for volunteers, 3 are up and running. The Bluebird monitors, the trail monitors, and plant records at our Arboretum campus. We will be, Sarah and I will be reaching out to you probably within the next couple of weeks with a survey just to get your feedback on kind of your comfort level in returning to volunteer, get your ideas or thoughts on what we might put in place that would make you comfortable, and just give us a chance to assess kind of maybe what attrition will be and how we need to plan for volunteer staffing going forward. Lastly, I think it's really important to note that all of those positions have been modified in some way. All of those volunteers who have returned, things are a little bit different than what they used to be. And there will be changes that are sort of generic to all volunteers. So as Judy shared or Jill shared earlier, we've got some protocols in place for staff in terms of wearing masks, in terms of social distancing. Those will all apply to volunteers. You will also be scheduling yourselves in VicNet or working with us to assure that we know what your schedule is and when you will be on our campus. For some of you, that's a little bit different than it used to be. And then certainly there will be other changes that are specific to your particular position. What we have seen thus far, what we're hearing from supervisors is that volunteers have been so resilient and so creative and through this and so committed to what is in the best interest of our organization and moving us forward. And you've just really embraced this. And whether that means finally, kind of figuring out how to maneuver VicNet or how to input data into an online spreadsheet instead of writing it on a shared clipboard, or learning how to use Zoom and coming to a virtual town hall. We're just so impressed and appreciative of your resiliency and your creativity and your commitment to our organization. And although Sarah and I can't promise that what volunteering after COVID, that it will be the same as always was, that you will do it the way that you always did, or that it will be in the same positions that you always had. We can't guarantee that it will be the same, but we can absolutely guarantee that we will do everything in our power to make sure that you have a volunteer experience that is meaningful and beneficial to you, and that you will be supporting and impacting the mission of our organization. So that's our plan for going forward. Jill generously offered to stick around for questions. I know we've had a number of other questions, and if you have any for Sarah and I, particular to volunteering, we'd be happy to address those as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Tracy. I think we're going to address some of the questions. Jill, I think, is going to take it from here and probably pull in a few other people. But please stick around if you can, and if not, just shoot us a question if you need to go, if you have any. Go ahead, Jill.
All right, so, and Judy, I'm going to continue to rely on you to help me. I only happen to see one conversation because I have not been paying attention to two things, time and the questions. So I do have about 15 minutes. I can be on the call until about 11:45-ish, and then I have to head out to something. But right, head out to another Zoom meeting. The there's some questions about education. And I know Sharon has been great about responding to some of those within the chat, but I'm going to ask Sharon in a second to talk about Lake County specifically, and just share, Sharon, a little bit, maybe more background or depth than what you shared in the chat. But I want to assure all of you, and I'm not sure that education is a core mission program within the organization. I know there have been some changes in structure of the education program. There's been changes in every single program area across the organization as we figured out how to manage as a new organization under Holden Forest and Gardens with 2 campuses, and now we're shifting again. But one of the choices we made when we were making very difficult decisions about who to lay off, and I can't tell you how hard those decisions are. If you've been in that position, I know you get it. We kept the education team in full. There's one individual who was in a more front-facing position, and that in a guest-facing position. And so the choices we made to lay people off were really based on who, in large part, more guest-facing positions. And and that's kind of the filter that we tried to use. But I remember distinctly a conversation about now more than ever, we need to figure out and have the creativity of that education team on site working together, because what we knew is that they were going to have to be doing, as Joel described, education differently when they came back. The world will have changed in the world of schools and in the world of learning, and in how we can engage people both on site in places like Buckeye Buds and Hershey Children's Garden and through interpretation, as well as in all of the outreach programs that we do in from both the Garden campus and the Arboretum campus. But Sharon, I thought it might be helpful for you to provide a little bit of just brief background on how we serve underserved communities, not only in the Cleveland area, but also we continue to serve those communities in Lake County. But I thought it'd be good for you to answer that one directly.
Sure. And Sarah asked me to reiterate the question, because if people are calling in, they can't see the chat. So if they're not following that, they're not sure where the thread is going. So one question, there were 2 questions about education programs. One was about where is it in the strategic plan? Because as Jill said, when she went through all of the slides, she just gave an example. If she were to go through every single program we did in every one of those focus areas, we'd be here for 8 hours, and nobody wants an 8-hour Zoom meeting. So she kind of just had to give examples. So it is indeed in there. Certainly when we're looking at underserved communities, a lot of times the example that is given is Cleveland. Simply it's just a very obvious one. It's one that a lot of funders are interested in. But yes, indeed, there are underserved communities in Lake County. There are underserved communities in Ashtabula County. Ashtabula County is one of the poorest counties in the state of Ohio. So when we do a lot of our programming, we're looking at all 3 of those. So rest assured that when we say Cleveland, it's the greater Cleveland area. It's just not the city of Cleveland. So whether that's school programming, after school programs, working with boys and girls clubs, we're looking at all of those. And just to reiterate what Joel said, and I think he did a very good job, what we're looking at is what do we do well now? We do a lot of things really well now. We have great on-school site programs. We have a lot of volunteers who work with those programs, so they know firsthand how they work. But there's lots of other ways that we can serve other communities, whether that's with different programming on site, whether it's outreach into those communities, after-school programs, going to schools to help them, looking at the programs that are in libraries. There's lots of educational opportunities. So really, it's looking at what we do. And as Joel said, what we're looking at doing for the near future, certainly, and into the future going forward is how do we serve those? And some of that's going to be remote. Becky sees this as a silver lining because she's been wanting to do a lot of remote kinds of programming, whether it comes with kits, how interactive it is, and it's really forced us down that trail. What we do know going forward is that we don't know what school is going to look like next year. We don't even know what daycare really looks like for the rest of the summer, although people can predict. So we are working with those schools to provide them with lots of great opportunities, and it's really forcing us to be very creative. And I'm excited that a lot of the ideas we've got are great ideas. And so we're not just trying to fill a niche now, but we're trying to look forward into what we're going to do. So a lot of interesting things coming up. As Tracy said, and Sarah, when volunteers come back, I've read the CDC, how you sanitize an acorn, and you don't need to sanitize an acorn, by the way, because it's porous, so we don't really need to worry about the acorns. But as kids are doing stuff, we're going to need to figure out how we do it, but it's going to be a little different, but it's still going to be good. And we're kind of working through that. So I think that answered the question, Jill.
Yeah, no, thanks, Sharon. I knew that you probably had the most detailed level of information, so thank you, I appreciate it. Judy, what else is out there on the question list?
There are just some questions about Woodland Twilight and Harvest Moon, how we plan to do some of our fundraising events. And I think Debbie's prepared to answer that question.
Great.
Hi, everyone. When we made the decision to cancel Woodland Twilight way back in March, we thought we were going to be holding a large event for Harvest Moon. And 6 months seemed like a long time. We ended up deciding that we had to cancel Harvest Moon as we had imagined it the original way, with a 300 or 400 person event. So what we're doing for Woodland Twilight, we're not holding an actual virtual event. We don't have an auction that we can hold. We were just ramping up soliciting auction items when everything shut down. We are going to send a fun invitation inviting people to make a gift in lieu of attending the event. So what they would normally spend on the auction or for their tickets, we're hoping they'll contribute. And then for Harvest Moon, we're moving that to events in people's homes, where we're asking hosts to have an event for maybe 10, 20 people at most, so they're within the CDC guidelines, and they're going to have a fundraising goal of give or get $2,000. The hosts are asked to provide the food. So whether they want to do a barbecue, a game night, whatever type of party they want to do, we are encouraging their creativity, but it'll all be branded under the Harvest Moon look. And then we'll have sponsorship opportunities as well. So that's one of the changes we're making to the event. There will be a virtual component to Harvest Moon, whether it's a live Facebook Live message from Jill at a certain time or a virtual toast. All of those plans are getting put together right now by the committee.
And one other piece that we're doing for Woodland Twilight, and this is really board driven. So the board were the first to know that we were canceling Woodland Twilight, which is our most significant fundraising event on an annual basis. The board stepped up, honestly, on truly their own initiative. We typically raise $200,000 a year from that event gross. And the board launched within their peer group a $200,000 challenge. And I mentioned this briefly before, but to say we're challenging one another as peers, and it was led by Paul Abbey, Aaron Kennedy Ryan. Am I getting the names right, Debbie? Paul Abbey and Aaron Kennedy Ryan. Yeah. To encourage their peers to all contribute to restore basically that lost revenue from Woodland Twilight. And that was a very unexpected and generous initiative that they announced at the very first meeting that we held with the board after the close. So that's also taking place.
Thanks, Debbie and Jill. There aren't a lot more questions, so if you have any last minute ones, shoot them in the chat, type them out there. But there is a question about where do we envision GLOW going in terms of volunteers? Do we expect to have GLOW?
Hey, Joel, that's you.
Hi. Yeah, so we are working still and currently on a plan for GLOW for 2020. Nothing is finalized, but probably some of the changes that we're thinking about would be, we're expecting that there will still be some social distancing rules in place, and so we would definitely continue in a timed ticketing fashion, timed entry ticketing to control the number of people. One of the other things that recommendations that we'll likely be following, and many museums and organizations like museums are doing this who have kind of more high touch type exhibits, is you would likely see little to no like kind of interactive, high touch type exhibits, like this past year where we had that, you know, that cool slide and some things like that. You know, it would be unlikely we would have anything like that that's going to pull like both clusters of people together, and, you know, also provide a lot of surfaces that, you know, hard surfaces that could be potentials for contamination. So we're thinking about things that are much more visual stops, you know, low or no touch type encounters. But we are still planning to, you know, move forward with a glow. Is likely to be a little bit different than it was, than it's been. With respect to volunteer work within that, I don't think we're there yet as far as what we might need and what we might consider doing. But as the planning moves forward, we'll think harder and we'll understand, you know, more what our needs are for the exhibit with respect to volunteer service as well. But we're going to keep, you know, that's obviously going to influence us as well. If it seems that as we're planning this out, that, you know, that might be a little bit more difficult to accommodate a lot of folks, or to have things where, you know, you have to have volunteers interact very closely with people, and we still see a climate where maybe that's, you know, not a good recommendation. We'll think about how that exhibit is put together and make changes based on, you know, whatever the environment's going to be at the time.
Okay, thanks, Joel. And one last question. I think you touched on this earlier in the presentation, but can you talk a little bit more about when we might expect to open a walk and emergent tower, and what kind of decisions might go into that?
Sure. I actually spent about 2 hours out there yesterday on the canopy walk and tower with my colleague Aaron Hepfner in a socially distant review of the structures, and we spent a lot of time thinking through the process elements of how we would be able to safely move folks in and out of those structures, and what we felt the capacity might be with distancing measures in place. We're confident that we have a workable solution for that. I'm not ready to go into the details of that at this time, because there's a number of things that we need to kind of recheck and confirm. But I believe we do have a way forward. We're going to watch how this opening works. So what we would be doing is, we're open to members now. Our next step would be to roll in ticketing for non-members. And then, you know, 1 or 2 steps after that would be the point where we would look to bring in the canopy walk and tower to that as well. There's a little bit of an issue there with our lead times and everything, because when the coronavirus crisis hit and we were forced to close, was right at the point that we were doing our hiring for the extra staff that we bring in to monitor those exhibits. And since we haven't been able to continue with that without until recently having a better picture of how we're going to reopen, it will take us a little bit of time as well to begin to procure those staff so that we can also operate the attractions with the monitoring that we need to have.
Great, thanks so much, Joel. And Jill, I think you have to hop off, so I don't know if you want to wrap it up, but.
All right, to get myself unmuted. Yeah, I'm grateful for so many people attending and so many people sticking around as well to end this call. And we hope we answered as many questions as we could today. If you have other questions, things that went unanswered, or things you think about tonight or tomorrow, shoot them to Tracy or Sarah, and I'm sure they can get them to the right person here at the organization. Happy to help at any time. And I just want to express again our gratitude for your patience, for your understanding, for all the work you have been doing to us or for us for a long period of time. And we look forward to getting you back up and running. We look forward to whatever that future holds. And I'll close with, someone was talking about was on a seminar, a webinar earlier this week, and someone expressed to me this great sentiment that right now it's really easy for us to only see what we've lost, but what we're not seeing is what we'll gain or what will be different and what new opportunities will come our way. And I think what I'm hopeful that we can start to do is start to focus on the opportunity and the sort of movement forward with all of you and with your help. As Tracy mentioned, we're not going to be the same organization as far as how we're operating and functioning, but we're still going to be providing the same great mission and working with the community in the same great ways that we always have been. And we appreciate your patience and understanding. It is changing, and Tracy and Sarah will do their very best to keep you as up to date as they can. And we're happy to provide you whatever information we can as soon as we know what that information is. So thanks to Tracy and Sarah, I should also say, and Judy for pulling this together. Thanks to Maggie, who's been behind the scenes advancing slides, but I'm really grateful to Tracy and Sarah for all the work that they do managing a crew of 1,400 volunteers. Couldn't run the organization without our volunteers. So thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. I guess that's it. See you later.
Bye. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Hey, Tracy,
Yes.
where's the button to change my name?
Okay. So you're going to go put your cursor right in the middle of your face. And you should see 3 dots that come up at the right.
That's how that worked. Thank you.
Yeah. I kind of like Uma, but you want to change it? Sandy, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Bruce and Lynn. Lenore's gone, but the waving palm tree is still there. This is great. I think that's Joan Banya on the phone. See if we can. Yep. I can't unmute her, but I know you can hear us, Joan. Thanks for being here. Oh, Sarah, you can't unmute Joan either. All right. Yeah.
Bye, Tracy.
Maggie.
Sarah, it was fun.
Hi. Maggie, if you want to go ahead and leave and hand the meeting over to Sarah.
I have no idea. Bye-bye.
Bye, Linda.
Hello, Tracy. This is
Hey,
Joan Bania. Can you hear
Joan.
me? Can you hear me? I guess I'm supposed to do *6 to unmute, so I thought I better do that so you can hear my voice, that I was here throughout the whole meeting, but you could see that I was there, correct?
We could see that you were here. Yeah, we're so glad you could join us. I'm so glad it worked, Joan. We're going to do this again, okay?
Yes, I'm definitely going to participate. I'm glad to learn about it, and I was able to participate. It's a great blessing for me.
And we will. We're so glad you could join us, Joan. We're so glad you could join us, and we'll try to get you those visuals in a different way that you can access. Okay.
Thank you. Greatly appreciated.
All right. Have a wonderful day. Take care. Stay safe.
You